everyone. Thanks for coming to, this is our fourth Electrify Your Life session. I've been here for all four of them. I feel like I'm becoming an expert in the topic of electrification. So the goal of this series is just to provide information to the public about the benefits of converting from gas to electric appliances and also the options that are out there. But we also try to give some practical kind of hands-on advice to get you started as well. And this series is supported by the Silicon Valley Clean Energy Decarbonization Demonstration Grant. So the topic for tonight's session is the Switch is On, which is an initiative that was launched by the Building Decarbonization Coalition. And our speaker tonight is Friday Apaliski. Friday, I'll go ahead and hand it over to you for now.
Great. Thank you all so much for having me. I'm really delighted to be here. I am the Director of Communications for the Building Decarbonization Coalition. We are a nonprofit organization that focuses on getting fossil fuels out of buildings. And we do that through policy and regulation, working with manufacturers on market transformation, and consumer inspiration. And for our consumer inspiration piece, we have an initiative called The Switch is On. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about The Switch is On tonight and share with you just a little bit about why it is important to have an all-electric home and how to do it. So with that, I'm going to share my screen and jump into some slides. But as Jason mentioned, please feel free to put your questions in the chat. And he will interrupt me along the way as we go. So I'm going to share my desktop. And I'm going to put this in slideshow mode. And hope that you all can see it. Is that working?
Looks good.
Fantastic. Okay, so the future is all electric. The switch is on. I love talking about this. I should also say, I live in San Francisco and I live in an all-electric home, one that was built in 1949 and now is all totally modern and without a gas hookup. So I will be speaking from my own experience and also from my professional experience. So what is home electrification? I know this is the fourth in a series, but I really like to start with really the basics. What are we talking about? When people say home electrification, what they mean is that every single thing within your home, all of your appliances, run only on electricity, right? So no gas pipes, just electric wires. And so the question is, why? Why do we want to have just electricity or just electric appliances? And really, here's the reason. That for climate reasons and many other reasons, clean air reasons, we need to stop burning fossil fuels. And the only way to do that, let me start again. The electric grid provides electricity to everybody. And we can make electricity out of all kinds of things. We can make electricity out of the wind. We can make it from the sun. We can make it from the waves. We can make it from algae. And yes, of course, we also can make it from burning fossil fuels, like natural gas or coal. But all that electricity goes onto the grid. And if all of our appliances within our house are pulling electricity off the grid, then we can fill that grid with whatever kind of electricity we want. And over time, we can make it 100% renewable and clean and green, right? But if we have a pipe that brings fossil fuels directly into your house, there's no greening that up, right? Those are dinosaur bones and we burn them directly and that's it. There's no greening it. So the reason we are talking about an all-electric home is because we are trying to stop burning fossil fuels. And that is the best way we know how to do that in our built environment. I am a native Californian. And I imagine some of you might be as well, or maybe it just seems familiar to you. But here in California, 20, 25, 30 years ago, everybody was like, oh yeah, gas is the clean thing. We're all using natural gas because that's the better option. And we were thinking we were doing a really good thing. And so I hear all the time, like, but isn't natural gas the clean stuff? And for sure, it is cleaner than coal, but it is actually not the clean fuel that it once was touted as. Burning natural gas is a really potent, methane gas is a really potent greenhouse gas. It has 80 times the warming effect as CO2, the stuff that comes out of your tailpipe of your car. And that's a short acting effect. So it doesn't last as long, but it's very much more powerful. So we really like it. It's dirty for our climate. Also, as it turns out, it's really dirty. And that burning fossil fuels in our appliances, in our buildings, actually contributes more to smog in the San Francisco Bay Area than cars do, which is bonkers. Part of that is because we've done a really good job of cleaning up cars and regulating what can come out of their tailpipes. And we have not done that same thing with appliances, but we are starting to. But yes, so burning gas in our home appliances makes for really dirty air outside, and it makes for really dirty air inside. So as it relates to public health and your personal health, when you cook on natural gas, a whole lot of particulate and toxins are released into the indoor air, and it turns out it has a terrible effect. In California, 20% of childhood asthma cases can be attributed to a gas stove in the home. So it has a really powerful effect. If you have somebody in your home with a respiratory disease, that's a really big deal. And so if we put that air, actually, when you use a gas range, it affects your indoor air quality in such a way that if we had put that air, the indoor air, outside, it would be illegal. It would be so dirty. But we don't regulate indoor air, so we can't do that. But it is quite dirty air. So it's dirty all the way around. It is definitely not a clean fuel, and we need to get rid of it. And this is the end of the downer part of my conversation. All the rest of this is about how fun electrification is. So I'm going to talk about the 4 big appliances that are in your home. That's space heating, water heating, clothes drying, and cooking. And I'm just going to talk a little bit about the benefits of each one of those. And so I'm going to start with the heat pump HVAC, or heating and cooling. This is me in my backyard with my 2 heat pumps. And I should explain the reason that there are 2 is because I live in a duplex. My mom lives in 1 unit and I live in 1 unit. And so we have 2 of everything, but that is not a normal thing. In a regular house, you would just have 1. But what I love the very most about my heat pump is that it is 2 machines in 1 machine. Again, having grown up in this area, I grew up in Los Gatos, my mom grew up in Los Altos, and now I live in San Francisco. I know that air conditioning is not a normal thing. Like most people don't have it, but a heat pump provides you with really fantastic heat when you want it, and also air conditioning when you want it, because a heat pump works in 2 directions. It either can pull the heat from outside and put it inside, or can pull the heat from inside and put it outside. So it's really fantastic. So I love that it's 2 machines in 1 machine. That feels like a super bonus. And it is 3 times more efficient than a traditional furnace. And that's because a heat pump moves energy from one place to another rather than creating energy through combustion. Creating energy through combustion is really inefficient, no matter how you do it. And even the most efficient, and we'll say water heater at this point, is, 85, 90% efficient. And a heat pump is 300% efficient. So really, it's easy to run it when you want it because it's very efficient to keep running. They are super quiet. So this is the outdoor component. And a heat pump, what I have is a mini split. So there's a little piece that's outside that you can see here in this photo. And then there's also, this is the condenser unit that's outside. And then there's an air handler on the inside that uses the refrigerant to transfer the heat, to transfer the heat. And then it comes through what I have is a ducted system. So I have ducts. And people ask all the time, well, is it noisy? Is it noisy inside? Is it noisy outside? It is not. It is not noisy. It is so quiet. And not that we have to worry about this, thank goodness, yet here in the Bay Area, but heat pumps work all the way down to sub-zero temperatures, all the way down to -degrees. They are still running at 100% efficiency, which is fantastic. So if you go to Lake Tahoe, you will see that there are heat pumps all over Heavenly Ski Lodge, and they work, which is great. But we don't generally have to worry about that here, but don't let anybody tell you that you need some kind of, that it wouldn't work. Heat pumps, air source heat pumps work very well, especially in our climate. And I will just say also, I didn't put this on here as a specific point, but the heat that comes from a heat pump, is very consistent and it's very comfortable. So the way that a traditional gas-fired furnace works is that it heats up a bunch of air and it dumps it into your room. A little bit like when you're in a bathtub. If you're in a bathtub, you have the water is all perfect and everything is nice. And then after a few minutes, the temperature goes down and you have to turn on the water again at your feet. And the water that comes out of the spout is really, really hot. So your feet get hot and then you move all the water around. And then all of a sudden, everything in the room or everything in the bathtub feels exactly right for a few minutes. And then it lowers again and you start that process over and over again. And if you think about that, that is often the case with a furnace, right? You can feel the really hot air getting dumped on you from the vents, and you're constantly oscillating between too hot and too cold and too hot and too cold. And a heat pump doesn't do that. It works all the time to put out the exact temperature air that you want. So you're not going through this oscillation process. And for a lot of folks, that really makes a difference in their comfort and their health. And it's one thing that I really appreciate. And because it is so efficient for me to run it, I can just set my house at the temperature I want it to be. And I am always at that temperature. And it is very, very comfortable. Let's see if I can get it to go to the next one. There we go. Okay, so just like you can use a heat pump for your space heating and cooling needs, you can also use a heat pump for your water heating needs. And you just take that same condenser unit and stick it right on top of a tank. As my boss often says, a heat pump water heater, it just looks like a regular water heater with an R2D2 on the top of it. And that's basically it. It has the condenser unit, and it pulls all the warm molecules out of the air and condenses them down and puts that heat right into the water. And it spits out the cold air molecules. So I keep my heat pump water heater in the garage, in a little room in the garage. And next to it, I keep all of my wine, and it gets nice and chilled. And I feel all fancy, like I have some kind of fancy wine room, but actually it's just my water heater room. And so for the most part, what's the thing that you want from your water heater? You want it to work, right? Like there's not a lot of emotional connection to water heaters, although I do really love mine. But I love it because it just works all the time. That's the thing I love the most about it. And it's 3 times more efficient than a combustion water heater. So that's fantastic. And it doesn't have any of the worries about what the side effects of combustion, right? I don't have a carbon monoxide detector in my house, which is fantastic. And last but not least, it's smart. So you can see there's this big black box on the side of my water heater, and that is to help it be super smart and respond to the grid. So I can program my water heater to only run during off-peak hours. So during the day when the grid has lots of solar energy and rates are really less expensive, then I can heat up all the water in my tank, and then I can tell it not to turn on during the peak hours, and use that tank kind of like a battery and save that energy and use it during peak hours when the grid needs me to use less, and I do, and I save some money. And I can set up my water heater to be part of a demand response system so that if the utility or anyone else says, oh, okay, we need to have like everybody shut everything off for an hour, or can everybody use a little bit less, they can control that. I allow them to control that too. So it's super smart, and that's great. We're still talking about heat pumps because they're fantastic. So heat pumps also work in dryers. And I will tell you, this was the last electric appliance that I got. I had actually a regular electric dryer, and it worked just fine. But the thing for me that changed was that the vent for my dryer was put in such a way that it was kind of flat, and it kept saying that the lint was getting caught in it. And I just got really nervous because I know from the fire department that the majority of house fires start from dryer vents. And that kind of freaked me out. And so I got this heat pump clothes dryer because it's ventless. There's no vent at all. And I love that because I don't stress about it causing a fire in my house. And it actually keeps all of those plastic microplastics that come off of your clothes. They don't blow out into the air anymore. They just get caught into the lint filter. So for me, it being ventless is really great. It also means you can put it anywhere in your house and you don't have to poke a hole in the wall, or any walls for that matter, which is fantastic. It is also very efficient. That's the theme. It is very efficient, and it's very gentle on your clothes, so your clothes can last for longer, which is great. I have now had it for, gosh, probably 9 months at this point. And it's just been wonderful. There's been no problems with it at all. My clothes dry wonderfully. It has a little condensate line that I just put right in the same drain that the washing machine uses. And it's super simple. So highly recommend a heat pump dryer. And last but not least, I really could talk to you forever and ever about induction cooking. I'm going to try and keep myself in line here and not go on too long. But the fourth appliance, and the one that we all kind of care the most about, right, is cooking. That our kitchen is for sure the heart of the home. It is where we feed our families and our friends. It's often where people gather when there's a party. And so let me talk to you a little bit about induction cooking. It is super efficient. So when you are cooking with gas, about 70% of that gas is actually just goes into the air. It heats up your kitchen. It doesn't actually heat up your pan or the food or anything. Only 30% of the gas that you're using actually heats up the pan. On induction, it is the opposite, because the way that induction works, and I should have started with this, we are not talking about electric coils. This is not the electric cooktop of your grandmother. This is modern and different. So induction cooking actually it works on the principle of magnetism. So when you put your pan onto the surface, the magnetism works in such a way that it makes the molecules within the pan bump together. I'm going to ask you to do this. I know I can't see your face, but I want you to do this with me. It works like this. When you rub your hands together, they get really warm. You can feel it. The faster you rub, the warmer they get. And when you stop rubbing, they cool down almost immediately. And the same thing is true of induction cooking. So you're not forcing heat around a pan or heating up a pan. The pan itself is the heat source because the molecules are bumping together and creating that heat. And it is absolutely precise and fast. So because we're not wasting a bunch of energy, you can boil water in like a minute and a half. I'm not even joking. So it used to be that if you're cooking a bunch of crabs or having pasta for dinner, you had to start the water early, like a half an hour in advance. Nope, not anymore. Now pasta is the fast meal in my house. 2 minutes and I got a pot of water boiling and I can cook super quickly. But I can also go from boiling water to not boiling water as fast as I can press the button. It's so responsive. It is absolutely incredible. And it's really precise. So you can dial in exactly the temperature that you want it to be. And one of the things that we do with the switches on is we have our chef, Rochelle. She goes and does induction cooking demos, and she often uses chocolate because melting chocolate on induction, you can just say the temperature you want it to be, and it holds at that temperature constantly. So it doesn't get too hot and burn. You don't have that incredible oscillation because, you know, melting chocolate over gas can be really difficult. You've got to have a double boiler and it can get too hot and all of these other things, but not with induction. You really can be very precise and set the temperature. And it's very much, you have a lot of control, which is why a lot of chefs are very interested in it. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. We have a picture here of Chef Martignan, who is not only our local celebrity, but a celebrity in his own right. He is a huge fan of induction cooking. In fact, on April 3rd, he's doing an induction demonstration with us in Cupertino. So if you want to check that out, I know it's on Eventbrite. It's did I say November? I mean April 23rd, coming up for Earth Week. He will be joining us to do an induction demonstration, and you'll find that prominent chefs all across the country are really starting to get on board with induction because it is cool, it is precise, it is efficient, and it's clean and it's healthy. So all those, there's no combustion happening in your space. So none of that, none of those byproducts of combustion are in your air or in your living space. You're not burning yourself. So there's no worry about flame or fire. Also, the handles on your pots don't get hot. I haven't used a pot holder in forever because there's no heat going onto the handle of the pot, right? It's just the part that's touching. Also, it's so incredibly safe. I have a young son, although he's not so young anymore. He's about to turn 10. But I've been cooking on induction for about 15 years. And I loved that when he was 1 and 2 and he could just come and hang out with me and cook with me. And I have all kinds of incredible pictures of him cooking with me because I didn't have to worry about him hurting himself or or getting, burned in any way, or even breathing any of these things. And you can imagine that in a commercial kitchen, those benefits are just exacerbated. It's not as loud. It's not as hot. The air is a lot healthier for folks who are there. There are so many wonderful things about induction cooking. Oh my gosh, and I can't believe I forgot to tell you the thing that my mom, who I told you lives downstairs, when she changed from her gas range to the induction range in our new house, or in our house that is new to us, the first thing she said to me was, "Oh my gosh, I love this because it's so easy to clean." And since I had been cooking on induction for so long, I had forgotten. But it is so easy to clean. It's just a glass surface and you just wipe it down. And because it uses magnetism and it only heats the pots and pans where you put them, you also get all this extra counter space, because if you put your hand on the space where you would think it would get hot, it doesn't get hot. It only heats up the metal. So I can cook on one, we'll call it a burner, but it's not really a burner, right? But we can cook on one space, half of it with my pan, and on the other half, I can keep my cookbook or my spices or whatever. And I live in San Francisco, so having extra counter space is like really a premium. I love that that's the case. And if the water boils over, I just wipe it off and it's no problem. There's no gross mess, nothing frustrating about it at all. It's very easy to clean. And it keeps my pots and pans nice and shiny. So there's no flame scars on the side of my pots and pans. They stay beautiful, which I know is maybe not the first thing you think of, but it is a nice side effect. So all of that is reason to love induction cooking. I've gone on and on about it. And I'm certainly happy to answer more questions, but it's definitely one of the more exciting things. And I will say that if you are interested in trying out induction cooking, you do not have to jump in with 2 feet and just go buy a range. You definitely can get like a tabletop hob. That's what they're called, HOB. And it just uses a regular plug, and you can plug it into any of the plugs on your counter and use like a one pot hob and test it out. PG&E and I think Silicon Valley Clean Energy have loaner programs, and there are all kinds of programs available. Do you guys have one?
Yeah, I was gonna
Library?
jump in with a plug, and actually somebody mentioned this in the chat that they borrowed it from us. We have induction cooktops. I think I've never heard the term the tabletop hob, but I think that's what they are. It's just a single burner that you plug in.
Yeah.
We have those that you can check out from us for 3 weeks if you want to try it out before you decide if you want to switch. So yeah,
That's
we got a
fantastic.
comment. Somebody says, I borrowed a portable induction stove from the Sunnyvale Public Library. The technology is impressive. I thought I would not consider electric stove, but this has changed my mind.
Yeah. Yeah, it really does, because induction really is different than what we think of as like traditional electric. And so I highly encourage you to try it out. If you're a renter or for whatever reason not in control of deciding what kind of appliances that you have, you still can purchase a hob, and it's not a huge cost constraint. It's certainly not like buying a full appliance. You can get for, $50, you can buy one. And they even come in double ones. And I will tell you, there are all kinds of images on the internet about how you can cover up your gas range and put your hobs on top, and use them instead. I will say there's some safety precautions that go with doing that, and you should definitely look into it. But that's a really great way to think about using less fossil fuels in your kitchen if you are not able to change your appliances. So I tell you all of this to say that electrification is the future. It is coming our way. There are actually now 1 in 4 Americans lives in a jurisdiction that either requires or encourages the adoption of electric appliances. And here in the San Francisco Bay Area, we are leading the way in this. So it is coming to us. And we want to make sure that everybody feels prepared and ready. So when you are thinking about changing your appliances, if you have an old water heater or an old HVAC system, definitely start thinking about heat pumps now. It's never fun to be forced to make these changes upon failure, because then you are on your heels and it's hard, and it can be a little frustrating. So electrification is the future. Prepare for it now. And we have some great resources to help you do that. I say this, that the switch is real on. The switch is on. That is our website, switchison.org. Again, we are a nonprofit organization that focuses on education and inspiration and facilitating switching. So I want to just take you quickly to show you the homepage. This is what it looks like. And if you see the Learn More pull-down menu, that first part there where it says electric appliances, you'll find that there's a whole section on all the different appliances that I just talked about this evening. There's special content also for renters. We've got blogs about how fun it is, and a newsletter if you want to sign up and find out what's new and interesting and exciting in the world of home electrification. And then to help make the switch, you go to the next pull down and you'll see that the first one is links to our incentive finder tool. And that tool is really incredibly helpful. It's the only tool that exists that shows you all of the incentives available to you right now. It includes federal tax credits, statewide incentive programs, local and regional and utility incentive programs as well. So if you put in your zip code, you can look at all of the incentives available. It's probably where you live, somewhere around 23 to 25 different incentives. And you can narrow that down by appliance if you are only looking for water heaters or only looking for HVAC systems. And we have a complementary tool called the Contractor Finder tool. So a lot of these rebate programs require that you work with a contractor that has gone through the process of understanding how to install these correctly and how to participate in the incentive program. And so we have a tool that will help you find out who is installing heat pumps in your area. You can look at all the different folks and you can see which programs they are qualified to work on, and give them a call. So both of those tools are really helpful in getting folks to switch if that's where you are. And for the rest of it, you can talk to me and ask me questions. So I'm going to stop here. And now I can see the chat. So I will answer some questions from the chat and then open the floor if you all have questions as well.
Okay, and I'll go ahead and I'll stop the recording.
Okay.
So just want to say thank you to the people that are watching the replay, and then I'll stop the recording now just so people, in case that helps people feel more